Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. Today I have an interesting story for you. Don't forget like to and subscribe. Now enjoy the story.
The vial was the size of a lipstick tube, and she rolled it between her fingers like it was a cigarette. She was deciding whether to smoke. "You'll ask nicely," she said, "or you'll ask twice." I was 78 years old, sitting in my own recliner, in my own living room, watching a woman I'd known for exactly 11 days hold my life between her thumb and forefinger. My blood sugar meter sat useless on the side table. My hands had started that fine tremor they get when the numbers climb too high for too long. And Denise, my new home health aide, the one my daughter Carol had hired off an app because the agency was too expensive, stood by the window with my insulin and a smirk that made my stomach turn colder than the vial itself. "Denise," I said, keeping my voice level the way you learn to after 8 decades of not giving people what they want, "give me the insulin." In a minute, she examined the label like she was reading poetry. "You know, Mr. Holloway, you've been very rude to me. Yesterday you called me young lady in that tone. Today you said I put too much salt in the soup." "You did put too much salt in the soup." "See, there it is again," she smiled wider. "I think we need an attitude adjustment before we do medical things." My name is Ned Holloway. I flew cargo planes into places that don't appear on maps for 22 years. I buried a wife I loved for 41 of those years. And I have type 1 diabetes that doesn't care one bit about anybody's attitude, mine or hers. What Denise didn't know, what nobody who underestimates an old man ever seems to know, is that I have survived worse than her before breakfast. "Fine," I said, "no insulin, but you should know my daughter set up a monitor in this room. The blinking light on the bookshelf, it's not decorative." That was a lie. Carol had wanted to install one, and I'd refused, because I am a stubborn old fool who values his privacy more than his safety, which is a lesson I was about to relearn the hard way. But Denise's eyes flicked toward the bookshelf anyway, toward the little ceramic owl Margaret had bought at a craft fair in 1994, and for just a second, the smirk wavered. "You're lying," she said, but her voice had lost its silk. "Maybe I let that sit in the air between us like smoke. Or maybe you're about to be on video threatening a diabetic senior citizen with his own medication. Your call." Here is the thing about being old that nobody young ever understands. We have had a lot of practice at being afraid, and afraid doesn't work on us the same way anymore. I was scared, don't misunderstand me. My hands were shaking and my mouth had gone dry, and somewhere under my ribs, a small animal was clawing to get out. But fear and paralysis are not the same thing, and I had long since stopped confusing them. Denise set the vial down on the windowsill just out of my reach and crossed her arms. "You people are all the same," she muttered. "Think you can talk to me like I'm the help." "You are the help," I said. "That's the job you were hired for, helping, not holding a man's medicine hostage because he complained about salt." She laughed, short and ugly. "Cute, real cute old man." She pulled out her phone, thumbed something, and I heard the click of the front door lock engaging. She'd had Carol install a smart lock 2 weeks ago, ostensibly so Denise could let herself in on early mornings. Now I understood why she'd insisted on being the only one with the code. "There," she said, "now it's just us. No monitor, no bookshelf owl, no daughter coming home for 6 hours. Let's talk about respect." My meter had read 340 20 minutes earlier. I could feel the thirst building, the fog creeping in around the edges of my thinking, the particular exhausted heaviness that comes when your blood is thick with sugar it can't use. I did not have 6 hours. I might not have had 2. But I did have a landline. Old and yellowed and mounted on the kitchen wall, the kind of thing my daughter had been telling me to get rid of for a decade, the kind of thing Denise had apparently never thought to disconnect, because who under 60 even remembers landlines exist? "I need water," I said, which was true. "I'm going to the kitchen." "Sit down." "I'm dizzy, Denise. You want me collapsing on your watch? That's a call to your agency you don't want to make." I stood before she could answer, using the arm of the recliner the way I'd used it every day for 3 years, slow and deliberate, an old man's choreography she'd already learned to dismiss as harmless. She let me go, That was her mistake. People who enjoy holding power over someone weaker rarely expect that someone to still have moves left. The kitchen was 12 steps away. I made it in 9, my heart hammering harder than any blood sugar spike had ever caused, and I lifted the yellowed receiver off the wall unit with fingers that didn't feel like mine anymore. I didn't dial 911 by punching numbers. I didn't trust my shaking hands to hit 3 keys correctly under pressure. I hit redial. 3 days earlier, I'd called the pharmacy to ask about a refill, and the pharmacy's after-hours line looped. When no one answered, straight to an automated message that gave the option to connect to emergency services if the caller pressed 0 and stayed on the line. It was a strange, half-remembered feature Margaret had shown me years ago after a health scare of her own, back when she still worried about outliving her ability to speak for herself. I pressed 0. I didn't say a word beyond what came out in a low, urgent rush the moment I heard a human voice. My address, my condition, the word hostage swallowed halfway into situation. And then Denise was in the doorway, her face gone the color of old paste. "Who are you talking to?" I didn't answer her. I set the phone down on the counter, receiver dangling, the line still open, still listening, and I looked at her the way I used to look at storm fronts from the cockpit, not with panic, but with the calm calculation of a man who has been in weather before and knows the shape of what's coming. "You should give me my insulin," I said, "before this gets worse for you than it already is." She lunged for the phone. I stepped between her and the counter, 78 years old and 6 feet of stubborn bone, and I did not move. She shoved me. I went down hard against the cabinet, pain lighting up my hip like a struck match, and somewhere very far away I heard her swearing, heard the scrape of the vial being snatched off the windowsill in the other room, heard the front door's electronic lock chirp and disengage. She was running. Good, let her run. I don't remember all of the next 20 minutes with perfect clarity. The mind gets strange when the sugar climbs that high, edges going soft, sounds arriving late. But I remember the red and blue light sliding across my kitchen ceiling like something out of a dream I used to have as a much younger man. Back when red and blue lights meant enemy fire instead of rescue, I remember an officer's voice, careful and steady, asking my name, asking if I could tell him what day it was. I remember saying Tuesday and being right, and feeling absurdly proud of that small fact. They caught Denise 4 blocks away, in her car, my insulin vial still sitting in the cup holder like she'd meant to sell it, or dump it, or simply keep it as a trophy of a fight she'd badly misjudged. She was charged with elder abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and theft of medical necessities. Charges Carol relayed to me later in the hospital, her voice cracking in a way I hadn't heard since her mother's funeral. "I should never have hired her without you meeting her first," Carol said, gripping my hand in the hospital bed while a nurse adjusted my IV. "I should have listened when you said something felt off." "You didn't know," I told her, because it was true, and because there is no use spending what time I have left punishing the people who love me for trusting the wrong stranger. Neither did I, not at first. She was good at hiding it. "How did you even think of the phone, the redial thing?" "I thought about your mother," I wanted to say. I thought about the fact that she spent the last 2 years of her life making sure I'd never be as helpless as she sometimes felt, teaching me tricks for exactly this kind of a day, back when I thought I'd never need them. Instead, I just squeezed her hand and said, "Old pilots, we always have a backup plan." Denise is awaiting trial now. My blood sugar is back where it belongs, stubborn and manageable, same as me. Carol installed that monitor after all, the one I'd refused for years, and this time I didn't argue. I keep the little ceramic owl on the bookshelf exactly where Margaret left it, and some mornings I swear it's watching the door for me, same as I am. People think being old makes you easy. Slow hands, slow steps, slower still to fight back. Maybe that's true for some, but I flew through storms that would have grounded younger men, and I've buried a wife and outlasted a war, and raised a daughter who calls me every single day just to hear my voice. And I was not about to let some smirking stranger with my insulin in her fist be the thing that finally brought me down. She thought she had all the power in the room. She forgot I still had the phone.